Hey everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week after a rather lengthy absence is Phil Ferguson. How you doing, Phil?
I'm fantastic, thank you. How you doing?
I know you're fantastic. I'm all right, man. How long's it been since we had you on?
Gosh, I think pretty close to a year.
Yeah, it's like it's become an annual thing. It's like, oh,
it's kind of like that, yeah.
It's time to have Phil on. So,
but I'm not in person this time.
Yes, unfortunately, we are, well, fortunately and unfortunately, there are good things to doing the show remote. I just want to mention real quickly that Austin's seen a spike in cases, and because of that, we've gone past stage 4 back to stage 5. But the governor decided to introduce some legislation of his own that makes it illegal for businesses to have basically any sort of COVID-based restrictions, no mask, no vaccine card, no nothing. So there's going to be court battles while people die. Isn't that fun?
That is, man. I know I am finding myself becoming really unstoppable rage inside of me because of the people that are not playing along with the social requirements and norms to keep people alive, and it's pissing me off. It's really kind of getting under my skin.
I hear that, but I'm gonna go ahead. We're just gonna jump right into calls. Screw it. You ready?
Yep.
Sweet. We have Alexander in Chile. Welcome, Alexander. How are you?
Hello, I'm pretty good, thank you.
It says here that the Kalam argument convinced you, and you found it the most persuasive argument for theism. Is that right?
Yes. One of the, I think that the most persuasive argument for theism in general is the Kalam Cosmological Argument.
I'm confused.
The lady who offered my,
Well, I'm confused because the Kalam Cosmological Argument, I'll just go ahead and state it real quick, and you can verify that this is the argument. The Kalam Cosmological Argument is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist. The premise is the universe began to exist, and the conclusion is, therefore, the universe had a cause for its existence.
Exactly.
That's the whole argument. And at no point in there does the word God appear? Does the word theism appear? How can this be an argument for theism when theism, neither theism nor God, are included in any of the premises or the conclusion?
Yeah, instead of specifically theism with TH, maybe the argument is serviceable for deism with D.
No, it's not.
An abstract belief. But in the sense of an abstract belief that there is someone beyond the universe that created it, do you not believe it?
Alexander, the argument does, the conclusion of the argument is that therefore the universe had a cause. It doesn't tell you anything about what the cause is. It doesn't say the cause has to be a God or a being or anything else. So the Kalam Cosmological Argument is not an argument for God or theism on its own. You have to add something to it. So if you became convinced of theism, what's that?
Yeah, I agree with you, but you will agree with me also that even if the argument doesn't specifically or explicitly lead to theism, it's still compatible with theism.
Okay, you know what else is compatible with theism? Everything that isn't non-theism.
Everything.
Yeah, I know. But what I mean is that there is a way in which the conclusion of the Kalam Cosmological Argument, which of course stems from its premises, enables belief in theism in a very abstract way.
No, it doesn't.
When I say that it's the most...
Alexander.
Let me finish this real quick.
No, I'd rather not, because I don't want to waste people's time. I'm trying to get to a very specific point. If you became convinced of theism because of the Kalam, that's like saying, you might as well say, I became convinced of atheism because of the Kalam. Because when I look at the Kalam Cosmological Argument, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, no, continue, go on.
If I look at the Kalam Cosmological Argument, it doesn't mention God or theism. All it says is the universe had a cause. And in the way that you've concluded there must be a God that, or likely could be a God that was the cause, I could conclude that there's a multiverse that serves as the cause, and therefore there's no need for that. So I'm fine with you reaching whatever conclusion you've reached, but to say that you are more convinced of theism because of the Kalam Cosmological Argument means that you don't understand arguments, because the argument does not support in any way what you say it does.
Yeah, maybe I made a mistake by beginning with that. When I say that it's the most persuasive, I really mean that it's the most or the least offensive in terms of, or at least it's the easiest argument to deal with. Another argument that I will offer you, for theism specifically, or not really for theism, but for supernaturalism, would be to ask you, what do you think?
I'm sorry, you broke up. You were going to present an argument for the supernatural, and all I heard was, what do you think?
For supernaturalism, yeah. So, sorry.
What is it? What is your argument for supernaturalism?
The argument, not really an argument, but rather a question. I would like to ask you, what do you think is the reason behind the overview effect, which is something that astronauts experience when exposed to the sight of the Earth from space? And they experience one moment of...
Alexander, pause. Huh? I'm trying to understand you. The phone has broken up a couple of times. You're asking me, what do I think is the reason behind what?
The overview effect. Did you hear me?
Overview effect?
Exactly.
I don't know what the overview effect is.
The overview effect is something that astronauts experience after they've been exposed to the sight of the planet Earth from space. Sorry.
So I would say that okay. You're asking me what is my explanation for that? I don't know. Phil, I'm going to go with the human brain. What's your explanation?
I'm kind of at a loss because I'm not really big on arguments from a conceptual standpoint. And we started from nonsense and we've gotten worse, I think, on this call. But yeah, I mean, maybe the one point that I might agree with is that the Kalam is the best argument and it's awful. So maybe if the point was this was the best of all the awful arguments, okay, but it's still an awful argument. It doesn't get you anywhere close to where you claim that it did. And I would wager, and of course you can tell me if it's the case or not, is this argument what made you a Christian?
No.
So it didn't even work for you?
It's not enough at all, no.
Yeah, okay. So it didn't work for you, it doesn't work for anybody.
There is a lot of things that you have to see, or there's a lot of things that you have to think about before even beginning to accept the broad brush strokes in Christianity, in my opinion. There's a lot of you have to accept.
So here's the problem, Alexander.
That there are unexplainable things.
Here's the problem. So you said you were going to present an argument for the supernatural, and then when I rightly pointed out that you were asking a question, you pointed out, okay, it's not an argument, it's a question. And so your question is, please stop interrupting when I'm trying to address you. You asked me, what is my explanation for the overview effect? Now, the overview effect for those people is evidently something that some astronauts have experienced when they get out into space and they look down at Earth and they see that it's a ball, and it puts everything in perspective, that we are just one species on a tiny little blue dot in there. There's nothing about the overview effect that in any way suggests anything supernatural. It is entirely about the psychology of human beings recognizing how insignificant they are in the grand scheme of the universe. Nothing about that points to anything supernatural. Nothing about that points to anything related to God. So why did you ask me for my explanation?
The reason I ask you about this is because I want to know why you think this happens. Why human beings have such a indescribable moment of beauty and calmness when exposed to the sight of a planet that we're not, that it's an environment in which we didn't evolve. We didn't evolve to see that. So how is it so intuitive?
We did evolve to see that. And I already answered your question. It's not surprising for people to get an epiphany when the scope of their experience changes. If you have only lived in a small town for your entire life and you've never traveled to a big city, when you go to a big city, you have an overwhelming experience of, wow, here's all this stuff that I didn't even know about. Similarly, the first time you get on a plane and fly and start to see. You can have that sort of thing. All that's happening here is that your mind is beginning to grasp that what it understood before is only a small part of the picture. But nothing about that points to anything supernatural. It's about our limited brains and how they recognize things.
I mean, the reason I think about this stuff is because reading about that experience reminds me awfully of the verse in Psalm 8:3 that you probably already know about.
I don't know it off the top of my head, no.
Do you want me to read it to you? I don't know if that's allowed.
Sure. Psalm 8:3.
I mean, Psalm 8:3 says, when I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon of the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them.
Yeah, okay. So what?
These people have this broad moment of awe without having seen the earth, which is replicated in the experience
Alexandra.
have gone out from space to see the earth.
Alexandra, what difference does the Bible verse make? The Bible verse is reaffirming what I've said. The fact that somebody concludes there's a God just because they've had their eyes opened to something more than their initial limited experience doesn't mean that there is a God. What difference does it make what it says in Psalms other than, hey, here's what humans experience? The fact is, humans have looked at the world and concluded there was a God behind all of it for ages, but that doesn't mean there's a God behind it.
But I don't even begin to understand how a naturalistic worldview explains why we would have evolved to see that or to experience that.
We didn't evolve with any intent at all. There's no plan behind evolution other than our survival.
You're right.
And so, please let me finish. Can I finish? My eyes allow my brain to perceive visual information about the universe. That benefits me. When I see Phil and I see him blinking, I know that his machine hasn't locked up and I see him waving. When I see a cat, I know a cat from a bear. That type of information is useful. All that's happening here is that the person from the small town sees a big town, and that gives them information that benefits them. Similarly, the person who ends up in an airplane or in a spacecraft looking down at Earth is seeing and gaining information that they did not have before. All of that is evolutionarily beneficial.
All right. Well, that took care of that, I guess.
Okay. I guess we lost Alexander in Chile. I got some announcements I want to try and get to real quick, and then we'll David, you're up next. We'll get to you in a moment. So hello everybody, thanks for watching. If you're watching us live right now on YouTube, directly below the chat is a donate link. I might also mention that there's also a like and subscribe link and all that stuff. All of your interactions here, go to here, let me click like real quick since I'm not watching live but have that open. But the donation link down there, 100% of your donations go to the atheist community of Austin. They don't go to Google or YouTube or anything else. You can also support the channel in a number of other ways, including by buying yourself some merchandise. You can go to bit.ly/AEN merch. Oh, no. It's merch ACA now. Did I get the URL wrong previously, or did the URL change and I wasn't told? But tiny.cc/merch ACA. It would have been nice to know that, but yeah, so it's cool. I'm glad I spotted it. That way they don't have to correct me. You can also become a member right here on YouTube. There's a membership link down there that will get you custom icons and things like that. You don't have to worry about slow mode. You can go to patreon.com/the Atheist Experience and sponsor us there as well. There are a couple of unofficial Atheist Experience Facebook group pages that we like to direct people to. There's the Atheist Experience fan group, which is at groups/AXPFG. And then there's also the Atheist Experience private fan group, which is so secret. I'm shocked they let me mention it at all, but it's AXPFG. And there's also the unofficial fan run ACA Discord. They can get that information up on the screen, and you can go there and interact with a bunch of people behind the scenes. Even after the show, Normally we would be engaging. Are you sticking around for the Discord? Because I'm not able to today.
Yeah. I'm almost stick around. I can answer questions about religion, God, or money, electric cars, whatever.
Sweet. I've got another caller here.
Oh, excellent.
And it's somebody that I've already spoken to. So from earlier today, Kenneth and I did talk heathen. Welcome back, David. Are we here just to tell me to fuck off again?
I never told you that, Matt.
You didn't say that?
No, I don't use that term.
Okay. Because I'm being told that you called Talk Heathen, right?
Yeah, I talked to you about the proof for God.
Oh, you weren't the one that told me to fuck off. It was a different person that told me. I apologize deeply, David. Thanks for calling back. How can we help?
No problem, Matt. Well, I just wanted to approach the claim that atheists would make about wanting physical evidence for God. So
whoa. I need to stop you again, David. I'm looking for evidence for a God, and I'm sure that Phil is also interested in evidence for a God, but we didn't say physical evidence for a God.
Yeah, I've not phrased it that way ever.
We couldn't even say that until somebody defines which God we're talking about to seek evidence for it. So right off the bat, you're suggesting we're looking for something that isn't necessarily the case.
Just stick with evidence. Evidence would be good.
Sure.
Okay, I don't know what other kind where there would be for an atheist other than physical, but
well, considering David, for the 19th time you are talking to an atheist, you could ask what kind of atheist instead of just going, I don't know, or assuming it must be physical. This is why I'm desperately trying to find some way to have a good, productive conversation with you. But you always start off with your own assumptions and misunderstandings and then don't actually engage. So how about if you're going to try to demonstrate the existence of God, tell us what that God is and what evidence you think should be convincing.
Well, Matt, I wasn't trying to convince you to follow my God. I'm just...
Okay, then I don't need to talk to you, I guess. Because I didn't say... You don't listen, David. You never listen. I didn't say, tell me what would convince me to follow your God. I said, tell us which God you're talking about and what evidence you think we should find convincing. That's what I said.
Well,
do you have a God, David?
The Bible.
Do you have a God? Is he forgiving? Do you need to get baptized? What are the rules for your God?
My God is Jesus.
Okay. Oh. What evidence do you have that Jesus is God?
Well,
we're here. Tell us
earlier, Matt. But but what I called to talk to you about was the problem with what you're claiming for evidence.
David,
do not claim that science. Wow. What?
Here's a big chance. You got thousands, tens of thousands of people listening, and we're sitting here open. You said Jesus is your God. I said, where's the evidence? And you went somewhere else. Why? Why is that? Why is evidence so hard for you? Just give us the evidence. Go.
No, I called to talk to you about the problem with what you claim you want for evidence, and you say that science is the best.
We told you that's not what we claim. So,
David, listen to me very carefully. I promise you, I'm trying to be as kind to you as possible. If you called in to talk to us about what we want for evidence, and the first words out of your mouth were wrong and corrected, you said you want to talk to us about physical evidence, and I pointed out that we did not demand that, and that the type of evidence we would need is contingent upon the God claim. How can you still be wanting to talk to us about what's wrong with the evidence we're expecting when you clearly didn't have a clue what evidence we were expecting?
Well, I've given my evidence before, and nobody accepted it. So
okay, then I guess we'll just move on to somebody else then, David. We're no longer interested in hearing from you at all then.
Why couldn't you just give us evidence? I don't understand. It was a different show, different listeners, different audience. If it's good evidence, just give it. Yeah. How hard is that?
Yeah, Add David to the will not take calls on Atheist Experience when Matt's on list, because I tried to on repeatedly, and David doesn't listen. I want to talk to you about you demanding physical evidence. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what other kind of evidence atheists would want. Well, maybe you should fucking ask us since we're here.
Yeah. And Matt, since you kind of got let down and a little sad, fuck off.
Yeah.
How's
Thank
that?
you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. Somebody needs to tell me to fuck off on a regular basis, and Phil's going to take that one up today.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a couple of announcements I want to get to today. Now that we've gotten through the second call here, and that is there's another Facebook group that's recently been put together that is Atheist versus Theist Debates Group. And so if David wants to go there, since he's no longer allowed to hang out with me on the Atheist Experience, you can go to facebook.com/groups/AXP fan debates. And maybe you'll find David in there, and maybe you'll get him to actually present some evidence rather than assuming what evidence you want or whining and complaining about it. But in addition to all of that, I want to mention that the Atheist Community of Austin produces a number of other shows. I was actually on Talk Heathen earlier today, and in between Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience, we had the non-profits airing at 3 o'clock with new hosts, new segments, and everything else. If you are not getting all these shows, you can go to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. That's plural because there's more than one of them. And that is your one-stop destination for all of the AEN shows. Truth Wanted, Secular Sexuality, Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, etc. And you can find them all in audio podcast format so that you don't have to, look at me if you don't want to, or look at anybody if you don't want to. And lastly, the whole reason that we're able to do this, the reason I found out in chat about the change of names and other thing is because we have, not even a slight exaggeration, the best crew you could possibly imagine. These people here who are, oh, look, some of them are waving. Why are you guys waving? Aren't you working? How can you be waving? You're supposed to be doing stuff. You should be clicking things and doing other stuff. I don't know, but they're the ones that make the show possible so that Phil and I can just sit here and talk.
Yeah. It's amazing. We just sit down, they check our audio, and we talk. They're doing all the work. So thank you. Thank you very much for all the work that you're doing. And the show couldn't happen without all these people doing this work. I'd say very impressive. I'm honored to be a small part of it.
I have a really strange situation. There are literally 2 callers who are asking pretty much the same question.
Should we do like an elimination round like in soccer where they argue with each other, then the winner comes on our show? Well,
I do have the ability, or used to have the ability, to put 2 calls on at once, but I don't want to do that because that seems like it's excessive.
That's dicey.
But I want to take the first call in the hopes that maybe the second call will be answered. So Levi in Florida wants to know if a fine-tuned universe provides evidence for some sort of design. So welcome, Levi. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Before I start, I just want to say thanks for what you do. I appreciate that you encourage people to think about why they believe what they believe, and that obviously doesn't happen enough these days. So, but just thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Anyways, at least at the start, this isn't coming necessarily from a Christian perspective.
Sure.
This is more of a basic question. I'm assuming you've heard of a fine-tuned universe or that sort of argument?
Yes. Many times.
Okay.
Indeed.
Then with that, what is your response to a fine-tuned universe argument? Do you see it as evidence for design in the universe, whether it be maybe there's a multiverse before us, or do you see, I don't think a God, obviously, but do you see that as being evidence that there is something before the Big Bang?
I don't. No.
First of all, I don't see any reason to think that the universe is fine-tuned. I think that's a mistake. That is one of those things about looking at around the world and saying, wow, I really, really fit the world. It must have been specifically created with me in mind, when the truth is all of the evidence that we have points to the notion that human beings evolved to fit the universe that we have. And so when we talk about fine-tuning, and I realize that there's a distinction between fine-tuning and the anthropic principle, and I don't want to conflate them. Just a simple response about, oh, it seems fine-tuned for me. My question is, my first question when somebody brings up fine-tuning is, what is it that the universe is fine-tuned for? I'll go back to the quote from Stephen Hawking that says the universe is, if it's fine-tuned for anything, it's for the creation of black holes. But what is it that the universe is fine-tuned for? And how do we know that it could have been any other way?
I actually have another quote from Stephen Hawking, funny enough.
Cool.
It goes on to say, the laws of science as we know them at present contain many fundamental numbers, like the size of electric charge of the electron and the ratio of the masses of the proton and the electron. He goes on to say, things like this, the remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers are at very, very finely adjusted numbers to make possible the development of life. And, for example, and this sort of topic has somewhat broad, I don't know.
I'm confused because you were presenting another quote from Stephen Hawking, and I don't know.
It's one long one, and I didn't need to go through the whole thing.
But you do realize that in his final book, he basically argued that there's no possibility for God in our universe, right? But let's just set all that aside, because that would be a fallacious appeal to authority, because Stephen Hawking isn't necessarily authority on God. And so it gets back to the issue of, what do we mean when we say the universe is fine-tuned? What's it fine-tuned for? How can you tell? And what were the other options? Because if I tune a guitar, I can show you other options, and I can tune it in many different ways. But if I have a stick, I can't tune a stick. It just is what it is. And so when we look at the universe and we say, oh, it appears to be fine-tuned, how is that not just us arrogantly assuming that we were an intended creation, rather than just recognizing what appears to be what the facts point to, which is the universe is what it is and may not have been possible to be any other way? Right.
Some examples of numbers that need to be pretty specific is
I kind of feel like you didn't listen to any
Yeah,
of them.
you didn't pick up on that at all.
You just wanted to keep right on going with your numbers from Stephen Hawking.
Sure.
So please continue.
Or
No. Continue. You have a sermon. Let's get to it so we can dispense with it.
okay. Details that I just find, or that need to be specific, such as ratio of electromagnetic sources to gravitational force. For example, if the universe were spreading at any faster or any slower of a rate with gravity, it would have been a lot shorter of a lifespan, would have collapsed very quickly. And all these things, I don't need to go on.
Yeah, you don't. You absolutely don't, because none of it makes any difference, and none of it addresses the question I asked. It's just what you needed to finish so that you didn't lose track of your script. Because no matter how you can say all day, well, if this was a little bit different and this was a little bit different, the universe wouldn't exist. So what? It's not different, and there's no demonstration that it could be different. And until there's a demonstration that it could be different, you cannot even suggest that any tuning, let alone fine tuning, has been done. That's my point.
Do you see there being any reason that it wouldn't be any other way? I guess that's a funny question. Or another perspective I've heard is, like if a tornado went through a junkyard, could a Boeing 747 come out from the other side of the tornado, and sort of all these elements in the universe coming out to...
it's like you're not even listening.
Yeah, it's not clicking.
Okay. I'm not following. Yeah, it's not clicking. You're right.
No, and I don't think it's intentional. It's just it's boggling your mind. As an example, if I take a regular die, 6-sided dice, I roll one of them, and it comes up a 1, and I look at that and I say, wow, that's evidence that it's finely tuned. It could have been a 2, it could have been a 6, but it's a 1, and I now know that it's a 1. And we live in a universe where things worked out in such a way that we live and that we're sentient, and we can actually question about the universe. If things had come up a different way, we wouldn't be here. That doesn't mean that it's finely tuned. It just means that it worked out in such a way that you and I are here. That's it.
But the other aspect of this is, in Phil's example, we know there are other options on that die.
Yes.
With the universe, we don't know that there could have been any other options. What evidence do you have, Levi, that the universe could have possibly been that any constant, any of those numbers, all of those things that you find really extraordinary, what evidence do you have that they could have been any other way?
So I guess with that question as a follow-up, do you find that the universe is not
Levi,
having...
I asked you a question. I am not,
Right.
if you're not going to listen and think and respond, why the fuck should I?
Right. And can you repeat the question again?
The universe, take any of those constants, those factors, those numbers that you want to point to as extraordinary, that they are what they are. Do you have any evidence that any of them could have been different?
No.
Yeah. So,
All right.
great. Thank you. I love you. You're now my favorite caller of all day, just for saying that. Here's the thing. And I agree with you. If we don't have evidence that it could have been any other way, then clearly it is impossible for us to ever reach a conclusion that it was in fact fine-tuned. Because if something can't be shown to be one of many possible things, then there can't have been any tuning.
Mhm.
So if we don't have evidence that it could have been different, we don't have evidence that it could have been fine-tuned. I'm not saying it wasn't. I want to be very clear here, Levi.
Mhm.
I'm not saying the universe isn't fine-tuned. I'm not saying it wasn't fine-tuned. It's the people who are claiming that it was don't have evidence to support that. And you and I don't have any evidence that could the gravitational constant have been any different? I don't know. I don't have any evidence that it could have been. But in any case, even if it could have been, let's assume for a second that you did have evidence that it could have been a different way. So here's scenario one. It couldn't have been any other way. Then there's no fine tuning. Scenario two, it could have been a different way, but it came up this way. How do we demonstrate that it came up this way as a result of tuning or intent rather than chance? Well, what a lot of people are trying to do is say, oh, it's incredibly unlikely. Let me run the numbers. The problem with that is that no matter how unlikely it is, it definitely happened.
Yes.
Now, did it happen because a god cheated and made it that way, or did it happen coincidentally? Well, if there's infinitely many possible universes and things like that, then it's infinitely many is a mistake because it's not a quantity. But there's nothing about this that suggests that there is a fine tuner as an agent, because you'd have to rule out chance. But before you can even rule out chance, you have to show that it could have been anyway. We have exactly one universe. We don't have any other universes to compare it to. We don't have any way of looking prior to the universe. We don't have any way of looking outside the universe. We don't even know if prior to the universe or outside of the universe are concepts that make any sense. Did you follow all of that?
I did.
So my answer to your question, do I think that a fine-tuned universe provides evidence for some form of design? Yes. If you could demonstrate that a universe is in fact finely tuned, you would be demonstrating an agency tuning and defining and designing it. But we don't have a universe that is demonstrably fine-tuned. And even amongst possible different universes, the fact that this one arose doesn't mean that tuning was involved. Tuning is something you have to demonstrate, that this was an intended plan and not accidental and not necessary, like it had to happen this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you think that, or do you think that this is the only way the universe could have came out? I guess this is more...
I have no idea.
Yeah, I got no idea.
I don't know how anybody could know that.
Right. And
it's frustrating for me because here's something to think about, Levi, and that's this. If there were a God and that God wanted us to know that it existed, it could very clearly demonstrate that to all of us. And if a God fine-tuned a universe, it could inform us of this so that we could know whether or not the universe was fine-tuned. But that hasn't happened, which means either that God doesn't exist or that God doesn't want us to have the answers to those questions. Either way, all of those people claiming that the universe is fine-tuned and this is proof of God are clearly wrong.
Okay. I guess that makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Levi.
About that for a while. So
yeah, think about it. Give us a call back when you come up with anything else. Thanks, man.
I like how he turned that around and started listening. I really impressed.
I'm not kidding. When I say I love Levi and that's my favorite call of the day, it is. People who watch the shows regularly know that my biggest point of frustration is if I ask a question and they don't answer it, because that's what happens when you're waiting for your turn to talk and you're on a particular script. And I understand. And by the way, you guys can write down notes and you can plan out things ahead of time so that you don't have to worry about losing your train of thought.
And you can call another time unless you get blocked. But someone like Levi, who's willing, it took a little bit, but he got to the point where he could pause, not look at his script if he has one, listen to what's being said. And I love the delay in the responses because it means he's thinking about it.
Yeah.
He's considering it. That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Well done, Levi.
Yep. And it's one of those things, I've hosted this show for 16 years.
Yeah.
I know when somebody's not listening. I know when somebody was just waiting for their next opportunity to speak, and I get it, especially you doing call-ins, but this isn't like most radio call-in shows. If you call into your local radio station, you're going to get to speak for 30 seconds to a minute tops if you're lucky. And then they're going to put you back on hold and they're going to talk without you. And you may not get back on.
It's one of the most valuable things I've learned from the show over the years. And I think where some of the callers might have a problem is that their interaction with normal people in the real world, not a call-in setting like this, they can talk to somebody and they can run through all of the steps, all of the scenarios, and then get to the conclusion. And the other person just honestly doesn't know what to say because they might not just give a shit about the argument. Where here, the very first time they say something that's fallacious or wrong or unknowable or unprovable, we are likely to point that out right there and then. Yeah. And they can get very frustrated because they're used to laying out these 3 or 4 or 5 steps and reaching a conclusion. And we can't get to that point. And you've said this before, and I've learned from this myself. If you let them get to the point and you say, okay, now I want to go back and address the problem with that you said in point 1. Right. And then they will say, that's not what I said. And so you have to go very meticulously, point by point by point. And when you do that, a lot of them get stuck because they don't know the deeper meaning of what they're saying. They're just repeating something. And like our first caller, if that isn't what helped get you into Christianity, what makes you think that would work for anybody else? And the other thing, and I love the callers, if you can talk to Jesus or God, ask what to say.
Yeah. Have Jesus give you a hand. I got the next caller.
Go for it.
So Juan in Ecuador, thank you for waiting, because your question was pretty much the same one that we just answered. And I thought I would have you, I'm assuming you heard the call and wanted to get your thoughts on it before we moved on.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different. So my call was more about, I recall you saying that if a supernatural occurrence were to manifest in reality in some detectable way, that we still wouldn't know the cause of it without actually investigating it. And I would like to know what the justification for that is.
Okay. So I did a video basically. I've done a couple of videos on my Atheist Debates program specifically about supernatural causation. My position is, I don't currently know how anybody could demonstrate supernatural causation, because in order to determine what the cause of a particular effect is, you need a bunch of candidate causes. So like there's a window broken. What are the causes? Well, it could be kids playing baseball or me with a stick, which is how I accidentally broke a window. You list all those things. But when you list the candidate explanations, you only get to list things that we already know and understand are likely probable causes. When I list the causes of a broken window, I don't get to list a ghost did it. It just doesn't make any sense.
Oh, I see.
Now, if we lived in a world where we had already demonstrated that ghosts in fact do exist and can impact the physical world, then I would have to include a ghost did it in my list of candidate explanations. So if somebody comes along and says, hey, I made a prediction and it came true, I don't know what the explanation for it is, but if they're going to claim that the explanation is supernatural, they have adopted a burden of proof, and they have to show, one, how they determined that this particular proposed cause should be included in the candidate cause. And then after that, they have to show the evidence that strongly links their candidate cause to the effect. Is that cleared up?
Yeah, that sounds pretty clear. And just my last go-to would be, what about unidentified phenomena that has in fact been detected, but still remains unexplained? Are you saying that we should just leave it as unexplained and move on from that, or should we keep investigating it until we find an answer? But the problem with that is that even if we can't investigate it, how do we just keep on asserting that we have no good explanation for it and just
Yes.
mystery? I understand the whole idea of, oh, really? Oh,
yes. If we don't, so I'm saying, so you asked a complicated question there, and I'm going to address it in two parts. One, you're saying, should we keep investigating? Yes, absolutely. We should keep investigating until we come up with an explanation, or until we get to a point where we realize that continued investigation is futile, or that we're wasting resources investigating something that isn't likely to bear fruit. But if we don't have an explanation, then the one and only correct answer is we don't have an explanation. You don't just get to make something up. You don't just get to assume that it's, oh, well, we can't explain it, so it must be supernatural, because that's how we got to the notion that Zeus hurls lightning bolts and things like that. People didn't have an explanation, so they went leaping towards other ones. As unfortunate as it is, right now, we don't have an explanation for many, many things. We've done a great job explaining a great many things, and we don't understand them fully. But if there's something that is unexplained, something happened, and we don't know what the explanation for is, what other choice do we have? Let me ask you this, Juan. If something happened and we don't have an explanation and we don't have a way to investigate further, what would you propose we do?
Well, I actually attempted to apply that type of logic and reasoning to an argument from authority. You know, like I can give one example: the Department of Defense, when they released that classified unidentified phenomena footage detected by a military-grade IR infrared camera, which is worth more than my house. It detected a phenomena, but it wasn't. The pilot, when he testified, says it was unexplained, and they just left it at that. So, I mean, it's just like it's not just us. Yeah. So
why aren't you answering? So first of all, how much, whether it's worth more than your house or not, isn't relevant. But I asked the question: what do you propose we do if there's something that isn't explained that we can't investigate further?
Geez, I guess that's a tough one. Didn't think of it that way. Yeah, I guess the only intellectually honest answer would be I don't know.
I like that.
My God, this is the best show full of callers ever. Thank you, Juan. That's and by the way, saying I don't know doesn't mean you're saying, oh, this is like somebody says, hey, is there a God? And I say, I don't know. That doesn't mean I'm saying it's bullshit. Doesn't mean I'm saying it's false. If somebody says, hey, are there ghosts? And I say, I don't know. I am not convinced there are ghosts. I do not believe that there are ghosts. But when you say, oh, there's these unexplained aerial phenomenon, and we've, detected them, and, but we don't have enough information to reach a conclusion, then it sucks. I mean, it completely sucks. It is awful. Not knowing an answer is one of the most difficult things to deal with as a human being, and learning to say, I don't know, is incredibly frustrating. And I think we're doing, I'll make my point that I've made a million times now. I think we're doing a disservice in schools by not encouraging kids to say, I don't know, more often. We terrify kids. The teachers will be like, okay, who knows the answer to this? Put your hands up. And, kids will put their hands up when they don't know, because they don't want to look like they don't know. And then the people who don't actually know are made to feel bad for not knowing. It's one thing to not know because you didn't do the homework. It's something else when the actual right answer is, I don't know. And if you're teaching kids, if your job is to instruct kids in how to think and in, to some extent, what to think, encouraging them to say, I don't know more often is critical, because it keeps people from feeling like another caller today, which was, well, it hasn't been proven false, so I might as well believe it, for fear that you might end up wrong. But that's, you're still going to end up wrong. You know what I can never be wrong about? Saying I don't know.
Fair enough. Yeah, that sounds good. It's reasonable, and I accept that. So
thank you, Juan.
I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Have a good day.
And Matt, I'll vouch for you. There's a lot of things you don't know.
That's a fact. You want to tell me fuck off again?
No, I was thinking about, and a lot of the things you jumped on right away is that his initial position, or his initial concept, was assume a supernatural thing happens. Mm-hmm. I'm done there. You know, I was just talking a few minutes ago about the step by step. When you start with saying something supernatural happened, whoa, what in the hell is that? I don't know what supernatural is. I don't know what the supernatural thing that happened is, because if it's a thing that happened and somehow affected the material world, whether you saw it, felt it, smelt it, it was detected by a X-ray detecting machine, whatever it is that happened, you detected it, you noticed it, you have evidence in the physical world. Well, then how does that still be supernatural? I guess I don't understand what supernatural is. And every time I've ever asked somebody to explain supernatural, it just kind of all falls apart, because there is no real solid definition. Supernatural is kind of a shorthand for I don't know.
It is when we look at the world and we say, now on a philosophical standpoint, you could say everything is either natural or not natural. And then you could say, if it's not natural, it is supernatural. But the question is there anything in that set? If we were to draw a set of natural things and everything outside of there is not natural, is there anything out there? I don't know. And how would you know?
It's very interesting, all these videos that got released, and a lot of people saw that as justification that the military was hiding stuff from us. Clearly, you don't understand how militaries and governments work. That's kind of something they do on a regular basis. But when you see a dark object on a light background moving around and you're told it's from a jet fighter, okay, well, that is now what you know. If that pilot then says, I don't know what I was looking at, okay, well, that means it's unidentified. It appears to be flying, and it appears to be an object. And I think we normally, what we'd call those UFOs, unidentified flying object. That's what we know. And that might be it. That might be all we ever know. And it's just unexplained. And sometimes life sucks and you just don't get a good answer.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite examples that I came up with was when Blake Junta and I were having a conversation. Imagine whatever room you're sitting in, that you've been in that room for your entire life. You've never gone out. You are in whatever box you're in. There's no windows, no doors, just 6 walls, essentially, or whatever.
Yeah.
That represents, for the purposes of this analogy, the natural world. That is the world that you inhabit. It is what you're able to explore. How could you ever say on the other side of this wall is another person, when you don't even know if there's another side to the wall? Because from your experience, it could be just solid forever, expanding for the very notion that there's anything outside of this room is something you invented, which you have no way of demonstrating. And when you do get a technology that allows you to demonstrate that, hey, this wall is 18 inches thick and on the other side of it is another room with another person, then that evidence makes that part of your natural world potentially. But at a minimum, even if you still defined this room as natural, you would at that point have evidence of something beyond the natural. But until you get to that point, until you get to some way where you can detect and show that, it is a mistake for you to even posit that there is something out there.
Ironically, I guess this is ironic. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like I'll care. But earlier today, I watched Bill Nye, a DVD that I happen to have, never got opened. And I opened it up to watch it. It was Bill Nye on Pseudoscience from 1996. I don't know where
Wow.
I got this DVD from, but it was just a hoot. And he looked so young, by the way. And he was going over things like Bigfoot and aliens and psychics and all this stuff. And it was designed for in-school use, where teachers could use this as teaching material. And there were supplemental documents that came with the DVD, all about this idea of, sure, question your world, but sometimes you just go, I don't know. I haven't gotten enough evidence yet. And when you have evidence, and like this show asks for on a regular basis, if you have the evidence, present it to us. It's going to make this whole thing a whole lot easier. Just give us that evidence.
I think we have a special video clip here that we like to show around this time. I know that the people have been waiting for me to stop talking so we could do it. So if you aren't watching everything that goes on AEN, check this out.
And try to have some fun and sort it out with towels when you're all done.
It's always a good idea to bring a towel.
Always bring a towel.
Why, hello, Dan. Nice to see you. Oh, hi, Derek. Thanks for being on the show. Yes, it's really great to be here. Oh, yeah, I'm really glad you're here, Derek.
June 2020, the Prince of Wales and the head
Are you sure
of...
that's the right year, Malty?
That was,
Okay.
yes, yeah. Don't break Multi.
I'll tell you what. If you can demonstrate to us that the proposition Jesus loves you is true, I'll say it all day long. Easy as that.
You're on with me and Seth.
Oh, you said Seth?
Yeah, Seth Andrews.
Okay, I don't think I know him, but I just want to make sure I got his name correct.
I love that.
I heard that. Who is Seth?
Yeah.
I love it. No idea.
I love that so much. Anyway, yeah, don't forget you can check out, we already gave you the link earlier. You can check out the podcast for all those shows as well. We have a caller here that I can't promise to remain silent on, but I will take a back seat if necessary. Fallon in Canada says that I give atheists a bad name and wants to talk about that. So welcome, Fallon. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent.
Well, I guess that's up to you, really.
Fallon, I'm going to be your unbiased, biased judge, I guess. Biased judge. You claim that Matt gives atheists a bad name, and I'd like to hear a little bit about that. But before you jump into it, are you or are you not an atheist?
I would say I am leaning more towards atheism. I used to be a Christian. Lots of questions, not a lot of answers, some answers.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that answer. If you don't mind me digging a little deeper, what type of Christian? Because there's a lot of different positions.
I would say born again.
Okay. And does that mean you do you speak in tongues? Did you speak in tongues?
Believing. No,
Pardon?
no.
Okay.
No, never spoke in tongues. No.
All right. Well, let's get into the bad name thing here. I would like to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So first I'll start off by saying I'm probably not going to tell you to fuck off, Matt. I do want to give you some critical feedback.
You can, and I don't mind.
Fine.
I did it. It was fun.
Okay. Well, and you can tell me to fuck right off too. That's cool.
Go ahead.
Again, as a new atheist, sort of former Christian who's questioning a lot of things.
Yeah.
I've been sort of looking for some guidance, answers. Taking apart a belief system at the age that I'm at is kind of a big undertaking. And so I've been watching a lot of thought leaders and philosophers like Hitchens and Dawkins and Seth Andrews and yourself. I do like watching your show quite a bit because you're dealing with believers a lot who are calling in with lots of questions and ideas that maybe need to be looked at a little bit more closely. But I feel like sometimes you just get so angry and triggered and frustrated that you hang up, you don't answer the questions.
Wait.
I'm questioning.
Fallon?
Fallon?
Yeah. I'm fine with the notion that you might think that I get angry. I'm not keen on triggered, but When you accuse me of not answering the question, I want some evidence. What question don't I answer? Because that's what I get frustrated with the callers, because I ask questions and they don't answer them. And so if you're saying that I'm not answering questions, I definitely want to address that. When has that ever happened?
And Fallon, if you don't have an answer right now, this is something you can collect and call back another time.
Sure.
Oh no, I've definitely got an answer, and it's usually along the lines of Matt. You'll either make a statement or ask a question, and the caller is just so married to their reason for calling in that they just keep going back to it. And I can understand that would be super, super frustrating. You're trying to take apart where their beliefs are coming from, asking questions to lead them to that, and there's almost a fear on the caller's side where they don't want to answer the question because then I think that the answer
Fallon?
will lead them to a place
Fallon?
they don't want to go. Yeah.
Yeah. So I asked a question just now, which was for you to provide an example of when I wasn't answering questions, which is what you accused me of. And instead of doing that, you talked about when I asked questions and how callers react. That is not answering my question. What questions am I not answering?
You do answer a lot of questions. Like when someone is looking for evidence.
Fallon.
About evolution.
And Fallon, what I'll do is I tried to give you that off ramp a minute ago. If you don't have a specific example to back up the claim, because you made the claim and then Matt said, give an example. If you don't have an example at this time, that's cool. Just say, I don't have a specific example to give you at this time, Matt. And it'd be fine. If you do have a specific example, now you could actually give it to Matt.
Yeah,
so
because you
it's
said
one of the two. Do you have an example or not have an example?
I don't have a specific caller or a specific call.
Okay, that's cool.
I've noticed
So no harm there.
Cool.
You've answered Matt's question. He says, "Do you have?"
That's all I wanted was an answer to my question.
Yep.
So let's get back to how I'm giving atheism or atheists a bad
So now you've said no. You can collect one and call back. So that topic is now set aside, and now we go to the original comment: is how is Matt giving atheism a bad name? I guess that's what your position was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the reason that I say that is from my own personal experience of atheists before I started questioning my own faith. I found them to be arrogant, smug.
Sure. You know, if I may, Fallon, I'm so sorry. I hate interrupting. I asked your reference to Matt, and now there's another example. You didn't answer that question. You went into your experience with other atheists. So if I can, what about Matt? What has he done that gives atheists a bad name?
Well, acting that way towards.
Okay, what way is he acting?
People that aren't.
I'm confused though,
smug,
because
arrogant.
you said that you had that opinion of atheists before me. So how am I responsible for that? Seems to me that you're walking in with baggage. It seems to me that you just admitted walking in with baggage and then judging me based on that baggage.
A little bit. I guess what I'm saying is it sort of confirms what my experience of atheists has been a little bit.
I have another thought, if I can be so rude. Forgive me. There are a lot of atheists that are quiet. There's a lot of atheists that are silent. They don't use their atheism or lack of belief in God pretty much any way in their life, in their work life, and they're quiet. And what some of us have found out is that being really quiet like that hasn't fucking worked. And so if that type of person was a host on a show, it'd probably be so painfully boring that no one would watch it. So that maybe that's an effect. And I know that in my personal life, I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of the times it is a very casual, polite, and gentle conversation. However, I have had occasions where I'm the asshole, and I'm clearly the asshole, and I know that I'm the asshole in the moment, and I still may not be able to stop myself because sometimes I've explained things so many times in my life that it becomes difficult to be calm and polite and rational. And maybe that's a weakness on my part. But I've also had the experience where sometimes people come back to me a year or 2 or 5 years later and said, Phil, years ago we talked and you were kind of a dick, but I couldn't argue against you. I just got mad that you're a dick. And so I started doing research. And then when they did that research, they realized that maybe what they thought was keeping them religious was wrong. And so they changed their position because of the prompting of me being kind of a jerk about it. Doesn't always work that way, but very few people get deconverted during a conversation. And sometimes some people, they're better off when challenged and then they go forward with that. So maybe Matt seems a little more rough than you'd like. And I think there's merit for that position, but is he effective? Because I know one of my goals as an evangelical atheist is to try to help as many people out of religion. And often that's a nice conversation, but sometimes it requires kind of a verbal slap in the face where someone gets confronted and has to get challenged and go try to find the evidence and come back. I know I just ranted a lot, so go ahead, Fallon, tell us something.
I think you hit on a key point for me is the notion of effectiveness, right? And so I've watched, I don't know, I'm almost embarrassed to think about how many hours of this show I've watched. I'm just so thirsty for information. And a lot of times I walk away thinking I got so much out of that. Matt and or guest has explained things so well that I really just get it. And then other times it's like, the caller, and I can't give you a specific example, but where they're, really pressing on something and then it just leads to this frustration and hang up situation where I'm like, I wanted the answer to that because I question that myself.
It's funny because sometimes
I don't get
it. When I listen to the show as the podcast, I'm often annoyed by how long Matt does talk to people and some other hosts because my fuse might even be.
That's true too.
Yeah, my fuse might even be shorter. And it's one of those things that if you are on enough video or if you have a blog or a podcast like I have, the Phil Ferguson show, by the way, someone can always find something that I did wrong or that I didn't react the right way. It's not scripted. We don't know who's calling and what they're going to say. So sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge, but I get your point. And I think Matt would be the first to say sometimes he reacts a little too harshly, but it's a tough gig. And some of the people that call just don't pay attention and don't listen. And that can be very frustrating.
Oh, I know.
I'll be evidently the second person.
There are times where Matt gets, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying I'll probably be the second person to say it since Phil just said it. I want to make sure that we don't forget, because I'm not going to end the call right now, because I have a couple of questions that may be clarifying. But also, I want to make sure we promote the email address, which is tv@atheist-community.org. They can get it up at the bottom of the screen. You can email in, as can anybody else, with any specific complaints or otherwise. I kind of want to... So you're not remotely the first person to suggest that I'm arrogant or smug or that I've given atheists a bad name or that I've been rude to callers or anything else. It's happened many times over the years. But it's never happened from people. Well, all right, let me correct this a little bit. I've hosted this show for 16 years. I've dealt with the same arguments over and over and over again. And I think that I have the capacity to maintain my patience probably better now than I did maybe 5 or 6 years ago or 7 years ago. But I don't see, first of all, that there's necessarily a problem with sometimes people are going to perceive that you're being arrogant and smug, whether you are or not. And I wonder if those negative interactions that you're seeing, where you're like, oh, Matt's just being arrogant or smug, or he hung up on the caller too quick. Of course, I've hung up on people too quickly. Has it ever happened when there was an actual honest interlocutor on the phone who was answering questions and having a discussion?
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. And so one thing to keep,
people are so married to their beliefs, they're afraid to confront the questions you're asking because it would lead them to an answer they can't accept.
One thing to try and remember
if we.
One thing to try and remember is that right now I have 6 people on hold. That can be as many as 9, I think. And I have, what do we got? There's 4,500 people watching live right now. That can be as much as 6,000 depending on the week. And then there are multiple people who are going to be watching this. And so I have to do a rather complicated dance, which is figuring out how long do I let the caller go on? How long, are we likely to get anything good out of this? Are we running in circles too much? Can I still get some kind of point out of this? Is the caller reachable? Is somebody at home who thinks like the caller, are they still potentially reachable? When am I wasting time? And when are the people who've been on hold for 45, 44, 42, 51, and 53 minutes, when are they going to give up? And when they get on, if they waited for 50 minutes and they get 2 minutes at the end of the show, how are they going to feel? It's not an easy thing, and I'm not always going to get it right. But I honestly, sincerely, and repeatedly strive to give as good as I get. And so when people are actually interested in having an honest discussion, they get longer calls and they get a calmer me. And when they stick to a script or don't answer questions, fuck them. They don't deserve any more of my time or the audience's time. But I will continue to make use of them as long as there is a good point and some teaching thing to come out of this. But I'm going to get it wrong on occasion, which I will acknowledge every day. And twice on Sunday, like I did today.
Cool. I appreciate that because, again, I know some of the dimwits that get on. They're insufferable. I don't know how you get through some of those calls. But sometimes the issues they're bringing forward, like you said, other people watching might benefit from you chewing on the issue a little bit longer. And there have been some specific times where I felt that way, and that's why I wanted to, and I'm a little bit nervous about sort of being lumped into that super logical, as I'm kind of getting away of the superstitious crap in my life and I'm focusing more on, logical arguments and things like that, that I'm going to be viewed as, arrogant or I, think I'm smarter than everybody. And
Fallon,
find a way to kind of.
Fallon, I have terrible news for you. Yes. No matter how nice you are, the fact that you don't believe in a God, that you could dismiss somebody else's God, means you are arrogant and dismissive, because they have Psalm 14:1 to go to. The fool has said in his heart that there is no God. They they can do no good thing. People are going to.
And to that I say, fuck them all, because honestly,
I don't know. You're sounding a little arrogant and smug now, Fallon.
I know, and I've been accused of that in my past. That's probably why I recognize it in you. I have been accused of that.
I can tell you,
probably much like you don't intend to be, but
I got to move. I got to move on to some other callers, but I'll tell you this.
Thank you for calling.
First of all, thanks, and thanks for the feedback, and I appreciate it. People who know me, people who are really close to me, can tell you that I spend probably too much time replaying the shows in my head and figuring out how I could have done it better. Where did I lose patience? Why did I do this? My way is not the only way. It's not even necessarily the best way, but it has in fact been effective, and I'm constantly striving to do my best. There are people who despise me for things I've done, and a lot of people who despise me for things I've never done and would never do, all because they're buying into rumors and bullshit. I, long time ago, learned that I need to be comfortable with me, and that if I surround myself with people who are willing to be honest with me and tell me, hey, you got a problem here, that's the best thing. And so I appreciate your feedback, Fallon. And hopefully, we both learned a little something about how this goes.
I really admire that. And I'll definitely call in with my more kind of like religious questions as they come up.
Absolutely.
Debate that.
Somebody's screaming in the background. They need your help.
Thank you, Fallon.
Oh yeah, I'm running.
Yeah,
Fallon.
It's funny, Matt, where we were talking about sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. A couple of years ago, I had a high school friend. So that's 30 plus years for me that I got out of high school. And this gentleman, we're in the same class. We're friends. We were friends in high school. We were friends outside of high school. He's not been very technological kind of person, never got on Facebook. He finally got on Facebook, sent me a friend request, and now we're not friends in the real world anymore. Because when we would talk about his kids, my kids, what's going on, the weather, sports ball, maybe. There's all kinds of things we could talk about. But once he had access to my wall and saw some of my positions and the stuff that I post about politics and religion, he just came unfucking hinged. And just all of a sudden, it was like talking to someone in a mob. He was acting as if he's a mob, because sometimes the nicest people feel that they are invisible on social media and they can say whatever they want and there's no repercussions, and just became the most vile person when I sent him a private message. And I said, just sit down and read what you're sending me. Have someone else read what you're sending me. And that was it. We're not friends anymore on social media or in the real world. And it's just heartbreaking that 30 years of friendship can just disappear like that because they don't like what I had to say.
Yeah. I had people who, my brother actually put together a Facebook group when Facebook was still kind of new and early, of inviting all the kids who were part of our church youth group from when we were teenagers to join. Yeah. So we'd have a place to gather. And he made the mistake of adding me to the group.
Right.
And even without me saying a word, of course, people added and they wanted to reconnect, and they hop over to my Facebook page and they discover that now I'm an atheist talking about this. That group died instantly because there are some people in that group, and I love them for it, who are still my friends, and we don't talk much, but we could interact. We could have, this religious subject isn't the entirety of my existence and shouldn't be the entirety of anybody's. If you get no other lesson from the atheist experience, is, maybe take your religion with a fucking grain of salt, and maybe we wouldn't have to spend so much time dealing with it. Stop trying to legislate your religious views on everybody. If it was like a hobby, I could be like, well, okay, you do whatever, but it's not. It's impacting all of us.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a call that somebody listed as potentially a longer call, but I think we can get through it perhaps quicker. Paulo in DC wants to prove the existence of God through legal means. So welcome, Paulo. How can we let's talk this out?
Hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Okay. Listen, I know that I don't have so much time. I would like to spend hours and days talking about these things. However, I only have 5 minutes or less. So my statement of belief, which I believe in God, it is the following. I hold the existence of God to be self-evident because the universe exists and we exist.
No. Paulo.
Wow.
Yes.
So I was told here, the call screener has a note here that you're saying wants to prove the existence of God through legal means. Our legal system was based on God's existence. Liberty comes from God. I thought that's what we were going to talk about. But if you want to just say that you,
yes.
If you find the existence of
No.
Paulo, stop. I'm still talking.
Yes.
When you say you find the existence of God to be self-evident, and then you follow that with the word because, you are horribly confused.
Yeah,
because
that's not self-evident.
Self-evident doesn't have a because. There is no because. It's just self-evident. And if you think that the existence of God is self-evident, then we have nothing to discuss, because I don't see that it's self-evident.
Okay. Can I follow up with something?
Sure.
Okay. So as you can tell, my statement was kind of inspired by the Declaration of Independence. Because
I couldn't tell that at all.
Yeah, but Paulo, the Declaration of Independence doesn't prove that God exists. It proves that people believed God exists, right?
Okay. The Declaration of Independence, it holds those truths to be self-evident, and that we are endowed by our Creator. So,
yes, I'm aware. Paulo. I'm aware of what the Declaration says. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among these being blah 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 blah.
Right.
However, That is a statement of what people believed. That is not a statement of what is actually true. Neither, I don't agree that it's self-evident. I don't think people are endowed by a creator. That needs to be demonstrated with evidence. And so the Declaration of Independence is a demonstration that people believed there was a God. It is not a demonstration that there is a God.
This is correct. However, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution is the foundation of our legal system.
No,
the Declaration is not.
So
Paulo,
for you.
Paulo, stop.
Okay.
You cannot agree with me and then say, however, just like you can't say self-evident and then say because. It doesn't matter. It does not matter whether the Declaration of Independence is the foundation of our legal system. It is not. The Constitution is. The Declaration is our establishment of independence. It has no legal meaning at all. But it doesn't matter whether the Constitution, even if we had a Constitution that said there is a God, motherfuckers, that doesn't mean it's true. And whether or not it's the foundation of laws in the United States is irrelevant to whether or not there's a God, not the least of which is the U.S. Constitution doesn't apply in Canada, Mexico, the Philippines, and every other country on the planet. So when you're making a case for the existence of a God, pointing to there are people who believe that there was a God is irrelevant. So do you have anything that would show relevance to demonstrating a God exists?
It is very relevant. But
no, sir, it's not.
What I wanted to ask you, if I bring a lawsuit in federal court, asking the court to declare that God exists, do you think it will be successful based on our
It doesn't matter either.
United States?
No, it would not be successful. And even if they did it, that wouldn't mean that a God exists.
It's like declaring Santa Claus is real in some movies. They go to court. The court says, yes, Santa Claus is real. He's not real. The court just said it was.
Well,
that's a ruling. It's not a fact.
I understand, but the consequences
sure
are
you
very
do.
dramatic. Because the fact that we have rights in this country is because we are born with rights and they call God.
No, sir. No, sir. You are flatly wrong. We have rights in this country because we say we have rights, because we codify those rights, and we instantiate laws to protect those rights. We don't have rights because of a God. We don't have rights because of some inalienable gift. Rights only exist to the extent that human beings say, we are granting these rights to the citizens of this country, and we will fight and die to protect them. That is how rights are established.
But the problem.
Paulo, you are not listening.
That is the problem.
Paulo, you are not listening. Okay. It is becoming incredibly clear because I can barely finish talking before you say yes, but, or correct, however. Do you have anything that serves as evidence for the existence of a God? If not, I'm moving on.
You can move on, Matt. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, he turned out honest in the end when he acknowledged he doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
We've got Ike in Texas wants to talk to us a little bit about philosophical evidence for God. Thank you so much for waiting, Ike. Welcome.
Thank you. It's Hank, short for Henry.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's typed in here as Ike. So I got you, Hank.
Yeah, well, I've got a Southern accent, which makes it difficult.
Yeah. I find it adorable. I married somebody with a wonderful accent from Tennessee that I love, but we've got it correctly on the screen. So thanks, Hank. How can we help?
I'm trying to beat out your previous callers on your favorite caller today.
Sweet.
But I called in on July the 4th and talked to Gina and Dave about the only thing that was keeping me from going completely atheistic was consciousness. But I thought of something else after I saw a video of man in a discussion or debate with Jordan Peterson, which, by the way, I had to have a dictionary in one hand and the pause button in the other. I'm educated in in engineering, not in philosophy, but it was incredibly interesting. But Matt, at one point, stated what I think would be called a premise. So although I've learned a lot listening to Matt about art, the way arguments are presented, I'm not sure that it was a premise. But basically, I believe I say it right when he said the premise was he was better off alive than dead. Does that sound correct?
Yeah, I think that I suspect that this may have been talking about the foundations of morality from a humanistic standpoint, that you can begin from a few basic premises that, generally speaking, being healthy is better than being ill, being alive is better than being dead, that kind of thing. Was that what we were talking about?
Yes, it was. Okay.
Yeah, it is a premise. It is a possible premise that I use as a foundation for morality. It is not in any way absolute. There are circumstances, and I don't know if I acknowledged this during that talk, but I know I've mentioned it in other talks, so let me hit it real quick and then I'll let you continue. When I say, generally speaking, life is preferable to death, I think that there are, in fact, occasions where death is preferable to life. I'm an advocate for and will staunchly defend the right for people to die with dignity and to choose the time of their death. So people who are suffering from terminal illnesses that don't have any possibility of recovering and their life is just getting worse and worse and worse, I think those people should be allowed to die. I think society should be supportive of that we should be doing it in a medically and ethically responsible way, but that there are, in fact, occasions where not existing would be preferable to a continued existence. And I think it's obvious. If you're out in the middle of the woods and during wartime and you have no hope of getting to a hospital and your guts are spilling out all over the ground and you know that you're going to die in the next 10 minutes from bleeding out and you're in terrible pain, if you put the gun to your head and take your own life, I think that is something that should be not only accepted, but I think anybody could reasonably understand it. And then now the issue just becomes finding the place where we draw those lines. Hopefully that cleared that up a bit, Hank.
You explain that, and it sounds reasonable to me, but I'm not talking about those special cases that you're talking about. And this may be a short conversation because actually I'm just interested in your opinion of this because you seem to me very intelligent, at least you think fast. But what I'm talking about is when you said that, my first thought was not for people who believe there's a benevolent God. That wouldn't be the case. And what I was really wanted to ask you about was, what about the death, your death, or the death of anyone that would result in the saving of numerous other lives? How does that play into your philosophy, since it would seem like evolution would go against the evolutionary theory?
Okay. So I'll hit this real quick, and then I'm actually going to turn it over to Phil in a second because I want to hear what Phil has to say because I've talked about this a lot. For me, so evolution doesn't have a goal. Evolution doesn't have a goal or purpose. There's nothing else. We can kind of metaphorically say it cares about the survival, but not of individuals. It cares about the survival of the species. So the question is, what reason could someone have to die for others? Well, I think that some of the prime examples are when like a parent who's willing to die for their child. And it's because they know that their lineage is going to keep going on and they value their lineage more than their life specifically. These are priorities that individuals can make and adjust on their own. I can think of, for purely selfish reasons, like let's say I'm the biggest selfish asshole on the planet. Why on earth would I ever do anything nice for other people? Well, clearly I might do it so that I get laudits, people are praising me. Maybe I benefit from the praise. Why would I die? Maybe because I want a statue built of me that lives forever, that lives longer than I could. Those are possible explanations. But another possible explanation is that there's a humility in recognizing that all of us are mortal and that all of us have something to contribute. And maybe I've reached a point where I don't have as much to contribute as the person whose life I'm saving. And so it's not just completely altruistic, but I'm able to do something that might benefit all of us, or could be delusion. But I still advocate for people being able to do that. Phil, what you on self-sacrifice and altruism? I know it's an easy topic you can kill in 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Hank, it's wonderful to talk to you. Great questions. I think you've shown really good evidence of thinking about this, which to me is the important part. And we can have a nice discussion. But I definitely think if you want to get into an evolutionary standard, if all humans were just willy-nilly able to give up their lives at the drop of a hat, then there wouldn't be humans left to reproduce. So any species that is open to self-extinction, at least before they have kids, would just stop. So there generally has to be some desire to continue living. And I like the way Matt phrased it, where generally, the vast majority of time, living is better than not living. But you can add conditions and scenarios and whatever's that Matt talked about, that maybe you can talk about, where there might be a situation where if my death allows 100 people to live, boy, I might be willing to take one for the team. It's just one of those things. Now, if those 100 people were all my relatives and descendants, it becomes even much more likely. And that's not really necessarily a rational thing, but it's something that's part of our evolution, where the people that are closer to us, generally speaking, are more important than people that are more remote from us biologically. Although I do know some people that have families that the opposite is true, just because their family is filled with assholes.
I have relatives I would never die for, and people I met randomly that I probably would. Yeah.
So let me ask you, Hank, what would you like to ask next, or follow up from Matt and I's comments?
Well, I was thinking the first thing I remember that made me question Christianity was turning the other cheek that Jesus talked about. And I thought, I was raised in a fundamentalist Christian family, and it's like, we don't do that,
Yeah.
As I studied more and more, I was thinking about, could it be a indication that there might be some supernatural power that was guiding us in a direction, like when Gandhi probably saved the lives of hundreds of thousands, when he just led the effort to stop British domination using nonviolent methods, where he was willing to sacrifice his life to do that.
Yeah, and I think from time to time, that's a very noble cause. I don't know all the details there, but there is merit to what you're saying. But of course, the Bible also says that, for example, Jesus says that you should join me, follow me, and basically, in my vernacular, fuck your family. Fuck your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, whatever. Fuck them all. Come with me and bring your sword. And if you can't afford a sword, sell your clothes, buy a sword, because we're going to fuck shit up here. And you can pick the problem for me and I may be getting off your topic a little bit, Hank, so forgive me, but anything that you quote out of the Bible to support a position, you can almost always find something else, whether it's straightforward or twisted, that has the opposite position, which is why maybe there's 30,000 different types of Christianity, because the Christians can never believe. And I know I've said this, and I'm pretty sure I've heard Matt say this, that sometimes if we just want to sit back and say, okay, all of you Christians argue and decide what is the right form of Christianity, and then get back to us. I mean, do you get baptized at birth, or when you're 7 and you quote unquote know enough, or is it 13 that when you know enough? Are you saved by grace alone? Are you drowned in the blood of Jesus Christ, or do you have to do something good? Or is it, like Calvinists will say, it's preordained, so you might as well fucking party, because whether you're going to the good place or the bad place, your actions don't matter. And so they're all so different, which is one of the things that causes a bit of a problem on the show when someone will call up and say, well, I'm a Christian. Okay, that really doesn't tell me anything. I've even talked to people that say they're Christians that don't accept Jesus as an actual person, that he never did exist. And I thought that was kind of like a fundamental thing that you all had to agree on. But again, Hank, my apologies, I'm rambling, but
I got to jump in.
Yeah.
Hank, I've got one more call I want to get to, but there's one quick point I wanted to make on Gandhi and then invite you to call back and talk another time. And that is this notion of nonviolent protest. I don't, you kind of hinted that maybe there was some supernatural guidance behind it. If there was supernatural guidance to suggest that nonviolent protest was the best way to do it, why not? Why doesn't that supernatural entity just come forward and tell all of us? I think it's more likely that Gandhi was someone who had the courage to say, I see a better way, and if I have to die in order to encourage people to use this better way, I'm willing to do that. And clearly that method, he made the point and it was successful. So there's a strategic element in there. And what a lot of humans do is a ton of game theory. I'm going to do this, and this is likely to happen. And so standing there saying, I'm not going to fight you, but I'm going to stand here. And if you would like to beat me or kill me, you will do it in front of the whole world and see the consequences. Knowing the risk to being ostracized, knowing the risk to being the outsider, being able to push that towards a better agenda doesn't require any supernatural intervention. It just requires some thought and some conviction. A great deal of it. Thanks a lot, Hank. I got to let you go. I hope that was useful.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Man, we've had so many great callers today.
I have one more call to get to.
You're going to break the streak, or is this just another great one?
Well, I don't know, but I want this. Paul in the UK has been on hold for over an hour and had a question that I hope we can answer fairly quickly. So welcome, Paul. Thank you so much for your patience. You get to be the last caller of the day.
Okay, great. Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Fantastic. So shall I get straight to my question?
Please do, because we're already past time, so I want to try and knock this out.
Sure, yeah, no worries. I called to get your opinions on what they call belief in belief. I want to know whether you think we should care about it and why or why not.
Yeah, so belief in belief are people who, it's not like I'm absolutely convinced there's a God. It's just that I think there's value in acting as if I believe. Dan Dennett raised this in Breaking the Spell.
Yeah.
A few other people have talked about it. I think, of course, we should care about it because I think many of the people who believe in belief don't recognize that that's what they're doing. They think they sincerely believe. This is not like we sit around going, well, I'm going to convince myself that I'm going to pretend to believe because of the positive benefits from it. And what a lot of believing in belief stems from is fear that the world will collapse into chaos and immorality if people stop believing in God. And humanists are evidence that this is just not the case. So I think we should care about it in the sense that it is another aspect of human thought, which is probably erroneous and yet completely typical. We are, tying it into the last call, us being ostracized for not being a part of a group is death.
Mm-hmm.
Because, this goes back to our evolutionary heritage. If you were cast out of the village, that was probably death. And so if you're cast out of your group, your lizard brain says, hey, this is pretty much the equivalent of death. And I think religions prey on that because if you can't convince, even go to Pascal's wager, where Pascal says, he agrees with me, or I guess since he was here first, I'll agree with Pascal, that you cannot choose what you believe. But Pascal then says you should act as if you believe in order to deceive yourself into actually believing. And that sort of prescience about how humanity actually goes about this is an important lesson to learn. I hope that addresses your question, Paul, but we are way out of time. And I really appreciate you waiting all that time to ask that.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for taking my call.
Cheers. That is the end of the show. I have one or two last announcements today. First of all, happy birthday to Martin on our crew. And happy birthday to Jenna, whose birthday was yesterday. And Colson's, whose birthday was Friday. We've had birthday. It's like, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car. Except none of them are getting cars, at least not from me.
Not from you.
Thanks so much, Phil, for coming in and hanging out with me again. I love it when you're around. Where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Skeptic Money, but I'm rarely there. Oh my God, you guys used one of my favorite photos ever. The Phil Ferguson show is the main engine of my empire. Sad little podcast where sometimes I have interviews and sometimes I talk about money and investments because that's my gig. Sometimes I joke that the show is atheism and financial information, and I'm number one in that category because I don't think any other financial advisor in their right fucking mind wants to market to atheists. And that's what I do. And quite frankly, the more evangelical atheist I become, the more money I make. It's a weird thing. And of course, I can even see on the screen, there's the Facebook page for the Phil Ferguson show, which I'll go to every once in a while. People can email me directly, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. I try to answer every email I get. Fortunately or unfortunately, I get popular enough that sometimes that is an actual challenge for me to do so. But if people want to talk about investments, solar panels, solar cars, lots of fun stuff.
Lastly, and I know I do this regularly. I know you can't say enough good things about the crew behind the scenes here. These people tirelessly show up week in, week out. They screen calls. They try to find the best calls for you. And they're not just looking for people who are in agreement. They're going to put people like Fallon through who have complaints. They're going to put the theists through, even if there are two of them with exactly the same question, which I think actually worked out well today because it allows us to get to address something else. I'm concerned, and I'm not going to harp on about it. I'm concerned about the state of COVID. I don't want to get this demonetized, and I don't want to get into a bunch of side issues. Things got better, and that trend is not necessarily continuing. Please, I know I say it frequently, please take care of yourself and follow the guidelines in your areas and go and find out what's happening in your area, because a lot of people got to the point where it's like, oh, well, we're getting vaccinated, so it's all over and it's all good. And that's not necessarily the case, because I desperately want to hang out with Phil again in person. I would like to, in 2022, start touring with the Magic and Skepticism show, to do other events with other people, to be able to go to conferences, to finally be able to shake someone's hand and hug someone other than my girlfriend. I would love to do all of those things. I get asked on a regular basis, Matt, when are you coming here? When are you coming there? When's this going to happen? When's this? And the answer has to continually be, I don't know. I can't even begin to schedule the shows that I wanted to try and do in 2022 because the world is just not quite ready yet. But I'm not worried about how much I'm going to be able to get out and interact with people. I'm far more concerned that the 600,000 dead Americans and millions dead worldwide might continue to increase because of bad information, flawed pseudoscience, obstinate people who are asserting their freedom to not participate in protecting all of us. I've talked before about how it feels like some of us we're in a class project and half of them went out to go smoke and left us to do the rest of it. It is frustrating. I'm not giving up. Nobody else should be giving up. Those of us who are following the science can continue to work together, do our best to educate. I'm doing it outside of this show on my other shows as well. But in the meantime, please take care of you and yours. We love you guys. We appreciate the support. And we will see you again next week. And I'm on vacation till Wednesday, so bye.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.